You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are ladies, things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show has been bringing 16 years, 2,400 plus episodes to you of some of the most amazing minds found on Earth. Like we go digging throughout the earth and we find these amazing gold mines of brilliant stories and journeys and lessons and authors and people who share them so that you can make your life better. And if you don't want to make your life better, you want to make it worse, that's just not that kind of podcast. But refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss won the TikTok and Facebook.com/Chris Voss. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. We have an amazing young man with us today. We have Carlos Davidovich on the show. He's also a doctorate. And Jennifer Elizabeth Brunton, who is his co-author of the book that came out January 23rd, 2023. It is entitled 5-Brain Leadership, How Neuroscience Can Help You Master Your Instincts and Build Better Teams. Welcome to the show, Carlos. How are you?
Great, and thanks a lot for your invitation. This is a fantastic opportunity. I'm delighted to be here.
We're happy to have you. So you're a performance and executive coach with over 20 years of experience, originally educated as a medical doctor and drawing on your management experience in business executive roles for multinational pharmaceutical companies. You combine understanding of the brain and business to deliver lectures, workshops, coaching modalities that help your clients apply the principles of neural management within their organizations to create sustainable change. Welcome to the show once again, Carlos. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
The way to find me is very simple. One is my website, www.carlosdavidovich.com. And the other one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my social media, let's say, the one I use the most. And then just Carlos Davidovich and neuroscience, or you will find me there for sure. 5-Brain Leadership as well.
So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your new book?
Excuse me?
Give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your new book.
The book is I will start saying there is a metaphor to understand the different narratives that all of us we have inside. What I'm trying to say is, I define as a 5 brains, of course, but the truth is that the body and the brains, they work all together. They are all intertwined. But through evolutions, there were certain characteristics that we can identify each of them. But the key point of the story is not to talk about science at all. Is to be aware and to be mindful of those narratives that are inside of us that will provoke different outcomes, depends which one is in control. And then metaphorically talking, I like to say, let's be aware of our internal team. And those are the first that we need to learn how to lead before you go to the outside world, because this works like a regular team, people with different personalities, different interests, different goals, and different way to interact with each other. And we as a human being something very similar happens inside of us. If we can identify that, we can really understand our behavior, others' behavior, and how to communicate, interact, and influence each other.
So what are the 5 brains? How does that work?
How does it work? Okay, the 5 brains are 3. It's a way to, I will say, understand the big brain, no? The one that we have under a skull. In the evolution, we were not replacing brain. Civilization, the nature nature was adding brains. So there is a very oldie one that is a reptilian brain. Everybody heard about that one. That
Yeah.
is about survival, period. You
Okay.
know, fight, flight, and freeze. And this is the one that kept us alive for millions of years. And that 500 million of years of existence. The second one is the emotional brain that, let's be clear, emotions are all over our body, but the headquarter of emotions is in the brain, the second brain.
Ah.
And the newbie one is the newbie in the block is the rational brain. That, don't get me wrong, is the one that allowed us so much to do everything that we are doing today. For instance, to be talking like this right now, thanks to the rational brain.
Mm-hmm.
But is the brain we trust the less. Still, the brain we trust the most is the primitive brain, the reptilian brain. And that has positive and negative consequences in our behavior. The brain number 4 is the heart. So one guy found out that we have neurons, brain cells in our heart. So it seems like the heart is not just a pump. It has a lot of more complex capacity. And besides the romantic approach, it has an intimate relationship with our emotions.
Oh.
And the last one is our gut brain, the one that lately is quite trendy. Everybody talks about the brain in our guts, but that also has a very specific way of communicate and express. Those are the 5, and those implies instinct, implies emotions, positive or negative, rational thinking, and intuition. That is a completely interesting thing to understand. Make sense?
That does make sense. That does make sense. And so utilizing or focusing on this with your talk in your book is utilizing this neuroscience that can help master your instincts and therefore build better teams. Do I have that correct?
Absolutely correct. And that's why I say to manage or to learn how to manage external teams, the first step is to understand your internal team and how you manage yourself. Yeah, in that sense. So once you understand those dynamics that always happen inside of us, then you can go to the outside world and to understand others' behaviors.
And so building better teams, understanding your people better, understanding your instincts are as well. And you know, we live in this world that's kind of crazy. It's high pressure, high conflict, high stress, as you talk about in your book. Is this a way to try and relieve some of that, or what do you really feel that your book helps people achieve?
Mainly is the first step, that is to increase the awareness about yourself. So I will not say a cliche of know yourself first, but this cliche has has a support behind. Is if you don't understand why you behave in certain way, it's hard to deal with yourself, first of all. And what we need to understand is that there is a real self that can be in charge of those different characteristics. So the question is, who is in charge when I'm talking to my partner, when I'm talking to my team, when I'm trying to get A, B, or Z, whatever? So who is in charge? Because that will establish the final goal and the outcome. I need to understand that to be able to increase, let's say, a positive communication.
Tell us about your story, your journey through life. How'd you gain the experience you did, and what kind of led you down the roads that got you to where you are today?
Oh my God, do we have time?
Yeah, I wish. Got to make sure though.
In a nutshell, born and raised in Argentina, and a medical doctor, MD, and I worked as a medical doctor many years, but also I was an executive in pharmaceutical business in biotech, quite niche. Then I decided to move to Europe, and I had to reinvent myself 180 degree. I ended doing what I'm doing today. So I give a lot of talks and workshops on neuro management. In other words, combining neuroscience with business and organization. And I'm an executive coach. And I was lucky enough to be invited in one moment of my life that I was not a young man like you. I was I was invited to live and work in Canada. So I spent 7 years of my life in Toronto, and the pandemic brought me back to Europe. So in the meantime, I mean, I was like, again, to write books. There is a TED talk that people can see in YouTube. But in the end, to become more and more, I don't want to use the word expert. I will say to know more and more how human behavior acts and express itself, and mainly in organizations. I want to help people in organizations to be more productive, and I would say to have a better life. Let's put it that way,
Huh.
and to get the results that they want, not that others want.
Mm-hmm. That's always important to take and have, because you want to do as best you can with what you're doing there. Talk to us about some of the things you offer on your website, some of the coaching and consulting that you do.
Excellent. So everything, I mean, in everything I do, coaching, I introduce, I will say the components of my lens are, let's say, filtered by how the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, I can listen in a different way. I can understand what people says in a different way. I can read between the lines. That allows me to help them better.
Oh.
I give a lot of talks and workshops on topics that are common topics in organization. And what I do is to twist it and bring neuroscience behind. For instance, to give example, I talk about feedback. Feedback. Everybody talks about feedback, but nobody never went deeper on why universal feeling people hate feedback. Nobody wants to give it. Nobody wants to receive it. So because you expose yourself to a situation that nobody likes,
Oh
they
yeah,
can
no one likes. It's hard. It's kind of risky to be judged, right?
Exactly. To feeling judged.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way, knowing how the brain works, there is a way to avoid this situation. And then that is one thing I transmit to the participant. To give an example, one of the topics I now is people are asked me a lot to present is about the new Q. So we know about the IQ, the minimal level of intelligence you need to get a job. Then the EQ, that is about communication, how to connect with each other, empathy, very, very trendy for many, many years. Everybody talks about EQ and emotional quotient. But
Yes.
now there is a new one, and the new one is called AQ, or adaptability quotient.
Adaptability quotient. I like that.
Exactly. It's not resilient. Resilient is one of the components of adaptability quotient. But adaptability quotient goes beyond. And I like, because people that were working on this and creating this concept, they say the IQ, okay, we'll take you to get a job. I mean, you need to have some kind of intelligence. The EQ will allow you to interact with people, but only the AQ will take you farther to the future. Our capacity to adapt ourselves. And come on, what's going on more and more in our daily life is that's the only condition to be able, I don't want to use the word survive. I will say is the only condition to excel in this life. How adaptable, how open, and just, Chris, one thing I want to share, and not to go deeper on the content, but the main characteristic that shows how good you are in AQ, or could be, is your ability to unlearn. And this is a concept that people are so resistant. What do you mean to unlearn? How often can you give up things that you don't need anymore? But this is something that is very, very provocative. So those are the topics. I talk about growth mindset. I talk about, the process of changing the brain. Again, the brain has a system to avoid changes because it hates changes, and has another system to overcome those barriers. How? Yes, everything is in the brain. But the trick, or we need to understand, is how to deal with this. How to identify where am I, and then what to do. Those are the things I like to transmit in my lecture. Lecture or a workshop, I like to call it better, or master classes. So what I mean is, the process of change, you need to follow some steps. I present 7 steps, boom, boom, boom. That is the only way that the brain will be able to digest a change and accept it.
Yeah.
And all this information comes from knowing basic characteristic of brain functioning. So those practical ones that will help us to move forward in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense? I can expand, or just is enough, I think.
Please expand so that we can get some more data on that.
What else I can tell you about this? Yeah. For instance, when I start with my workshop and some company, they say, okay, let's do a program. No, not just one presentation. And then I follow a team for a time with different topics. I always start with the same one, that is from overwhelm to flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to say is you cannot move forward if you don't know how to take care of yourself first. No, the famous cliche in the airplane, put the oxygen mask to you first. We talk a lot about it. And nobody never understood why to put the oxygen mask first on you. If I'm with my son, with my daughter, whatever. No. If you are not in good shape, you cannot help anyone.
That is
and
true.
This is life.
Mm-hmm.
So then what I do is to introduce different tips, very practical tips. I try to be very practical. I don't like too much theory, too much content that will not help people to the next day at work or in their life. And so what I do is give tips on how to identify if you have anxiety, to deal with your anxiety in a healthy way, and to deal with the different cycles that we have in the body. Mm-hmm. In another word, and I will tell you another concept. In organization and business, we always were talking about time management. Mm-hmm. And when I always ask when I go, to the audience, I say, how many of you went through a time management training? Everyone. And people more than once. And then I go with sorry to tell you, those training was aiming the wrong target.
Oh.
Because there is no way to manage time. Time is the fixed factor of the equation. What we do, what the body does 100% of the time is energy management. And this is not a touchy-feely concept. This is a fact. Even though it has a medical name, it has allostasis, that the body is all the time managing our daily movement and the way we run in life, balancing the energy that we have. We have more energy, we do more. We have less energy, we need to recharge battery, we do less. Then the goal is not to talk about how can I manage the time. The goal is how can I increase my energy? How can I protect myself not to drain energy on the wrong moment? Makes sense what I'm saying? So that is really the right objective. And in that way, you can take advantage of the time in a different way. So the time management is a side effect of this.
Mm-hmm. How can leaders identify which of their 5 brains is like dominating their decision making? Yeah.
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
One concept also I will have to introduce now. Human brain is not prepared to make 100% rational decision. And I know it's very provocative because we consider ourselves very rational beings. Mm-hmm. The truth is that our rational brain will help us to do the analysis, will help us to arrive to conclusions. But at the moment that we need to action, we will mobilize emotions all the time. Mm-hmm. In another word, from the 5 brains, and that's what I share with people, only one is rational, what we call rational. Mm-hmm. The other 4 are in one way or the other connected with with instinct and emotions and intuition as well. So what I'm trying to say is 80% of the inputs that we are receiving all day are mainly connected with emotions and instinct. And that is more than, it's a huge reason to work in our life on how to understand those emotions. and those instincts. What are the impact in our daily life? This is not to become psychologists, okay? Don't get me wrong. This is just to understand basic things in the way I behave, in the way I make decisions, because the decision-making process relies, we like it or not, in our emotional brain, not in our rational brain.
Ah, that's got to be pretty freaking interesting. So
Yeah, absolutely is.
yeah, most definitely. What are some signs you talk in your book about what's called a misaligned brain dynamic? What are some signs that a team is operating from that point of view?
So, in the same way, if I can really, let's call it manage myself or control myself or lead myself, then in that moment, I'm able to, I would say, to connect with others. And I will bring concrete examples. In our daily life, and here in Western world at least, there are different personalities that could be great. I would say no, could get a lot of results through not exactly healthy personalities, with all respect.
Ah.
What I'm trying to talk a little bit is about something that's quite known, that those bullies, people that are quite aggressive, are quite direct, to say the least, and they get results, but not the results that will really end helping the whole situation. What I'm trying to say is a brain that is not well aligned is the brain that is relying on something that at the end will harm the team and will harm productivity.
Productivity is important, right?
Oh gosh. In general, it's very important. You know why the company exists, right?
That's true.
Yeah, the company exists because it has a purpose, but needs to be productive. Period. And when this kind of personality, I mean, that we normally call the bullies, these people are extremely intelligent, normally in top positions, and they misunderstand the alignment of the brain. They think they are fully rational, when the truth is that their brain is running in reptilian mode all the time. And when I coach people with this kind of personality, very direct, let me use the word aggressive. What I'm always tell them is, how do you feel when you are just using only half of the brain of your people? And they, of course, they react. What are you talking about, Carlos? Very simple. When you have this kind of personality that's quite pushy, let's say, or quite aggressive, or quite that only is my way or the highway, and so it's quite known this, Chris. So in that moment, all your team members are running in survival mode.
Survival mode.
Exactly. They are just trying to protect themselves and to survive. So they don't want to be fired. So what I'm trying to say is they are not giving the best of them. The only way to do that is when we feel safe in our working environment. That's why another of the workshop I share and I give a lot is how to create this psychological safety environment. That is a work to do. At the moment I feel safe, then I will bring new ideas. I will become creative. I will walk the extra mile. If I don't feel safe, forget it. That's not
Feeling safe is probably important because people don't want to be criticized or, told they're wrong or, other different issues that they can possibly have. And so it's really good to have all that as well, I think, right?
It's absolutely a must. A must is how to create this environment that people will feel free to talk, not feeling that whatever they say they can be punished because of that. Or they can be criticized. They can be, I will say, embarrassed about that. And not only by the boss. Sometimes there is an issue in the team, So it says among people in the team. So what I'm trying to say is a good leader, I like to define what are the 5 tasks that leaders cannot delegate. Because we talk a lot about delegation, but there are 5 tasks that leaders cannot delegate. They are responsible of, and they need to have it in mind. If you want, I can share it with you.
Please do.
Of course, they are very common sense. The number one is just setting direction, to tell where we're going. That's very clear. But the number two, that has to come from the leader, from the boss. The number two is the right distribution of task, the right delegation, because this is not about just doing what I say, is who could be in charge of. And the third task that leaders cannot delegate, I like to call it climate keeper. So how to create that climate that people will feel okay is creating a safe environment, is bringing the resources that team needs to have, is doing recognition that in our Western world, recognition is not so frequent in business. People say, okay, if you are doing well, something is your work. That's it. No. Brain needs to receive recognition many, many times. It's possible. So the number four of the task that leaders cannot delegate is the checking and follow-up of the tasks that they are in charge. Why I'm saying this? Because one of the things I found the most is leaders giving the task and they never do the follow-up because always there's a new task. What happened in the brain of the team members? If my boss is not doing the follow-up, this task is not important. And then I also leave it.
Now, speaking of living it, can you share a moment in your career when you realized you were leading from the wrong brain and how you adjusted it personally? That's a example that we can kind of work from.
Yeah. I remember working as an executive in pharma business in Latin America. I was leading all the biotech area. And of course, there was a lot of pressure from the headquarters of the company. A lot of pressure regarding results, regarding numbers, regarding all these kind of things that are normal in organization. And I was, I will say, unexperienced enough or young enough, put it together if you want, that I received the pressure without filtering the pressure. So what I was doing, I was just transmitting the pressure to my team. Hey, we need to do this. And creating and provoking a very unhealthy environment. And in that moment, in one moment, I remember to be called out by one of the team members, say, Carlos, this is not going to work because we don't feel safe, we don't feel good, and we see you nervous, and we see you that you cannot deal with what the organization is asking you to do. So what I'm trying to say is leaders need to be in a place to understand how to put filters to that information. In that moment, I just was running in reptilian brain or survival mode because I was not able to manage the pressure of the organization.
Yeah. And so people can read your book. How do they reach out to you? How do they onboard? What sort of people do you work with? Do they need to have a minimum net worth? Or I imagine you work with corporations and teams. Is there a certain size of company that you only work with, et cetera, et cetera?
Normally I work with people leading people, to be honest. And I know that we always like to say, I only work with C-level. No, I work with C-level and the next level as well. Because the next level and the next level will become C-level. And for that, they need to be coached. Because if not, they will go south. So I work with leaders at any level in the organizations that are responsible for people responsible for people. Regarding the size of the organization, is not something that I look for that because in the end, you will work with a team. What I like the most, and I have several companies, to work with a company. What I mean is, at least 3-4 companies right now, I'm the coach of the company. What that mean? Then I know what's going on internally. I know what the CEO is thinking. I know how the VP are receiving that. So in few words, I'm completely in control of the dynamic of the organization. I can do that with the small teams, with the big teams, depends. Of course, I mean, there is a limit regarding number of people I can deal with, but this is just a human limitation.
Yeah. And so people, how do they onboard with you? Is there calls available, scheduling available, and all that?
Normally they reach me through my email or through my website. And now I'm working a lot with the word of mouth because things go, there's a lot of people telling people and recommending. This is great. But people that don't have that possibility, I think that the best way, again, is LinkedIn and the website. So www.carlosdavidovich.com, or in LinkedIn is very easy to find me. And I receive mails through that. And then, of course, I always respond to every single email. And then we see how we can collaborate, and if the fit is there, huh? We fit to each other.
It's been wonderful to have you. Give people a final pitch out to onboard with you, order up your book, wherever fine books are sold, and all that good stuff.
The books is in every single big store, Amazon, of course, and depends on the country, is the big bookstore. It's a book that you can order online mainly. Yeah, it's a kind of book that will be printed for you. And again, I mean, I love to interact with people with all these situations because I fascinated with the human behavior, how people are able to learn and to grow at the moment they understand what's going on. And I would tell people, don't stop pretending that you need to know everything. Please.
That's kind of why you have a team, is so you can spread out that knowledge base so that everyone contributes, and one person doesn't have to know everything. Is that a good assessment?
Yeah. For instance, think about the word vulnerability in a new way. So normally the word vulnerability had a very negative marketing. Nobody wants to talk about vulnerability because it was connected with weakness. That is not the real concept of vulnerability. Vulnerability, the definition today is risk, emotional exposure, and uncertainty. At the moment you define vulnerability in that way, everyone, all of us, we are vulnerable all the time. So let's be comprehensive, let's be empathetic, let's say, and understand each other and help each other and support each other to reach our goals.
It's been wonderful to have you on the show, and super insightful, Carlos. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, really, really. And congratulations for your show.
Thank you, and congratulations on your new book. Order up the book, folks, wherever fine books are sold. It is entitled 5 Brain Leadership: How Neuroscience Can Help You Master Your Instincts and Build Better Teams, by Dr. Carlos Davidovich.
Carlos.
So thank you very much for coming on the show. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, and Facebook.com/Chris Voss. Thanks for being here. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. There we go.
Thanks.